Hi, thank you for joining me. In today's video, we'll be discussing breathing and abdominal connection, the first principle of Pilates. So before we get started, make sure you're comfortable. You're either sitting on a pillow like I am here on the floor, or you can sit on a chair. We can do the breathing exercises while you're seated. And just make sure you've got either a mat to do one or two exercises on, or your carpet will be fine for today. So just one little tip before we start. I want to explain why Pilates is different to other forms of exercises. So to help you understand, for example, gym work, we're using more the big muscle groups, the mobilizing muscle groups we call them. So the muscles that actually move your body. For example, your bicep, it actually flexes your elbow joint. So this is a mobilizing muscle. Your six pack, which is in the front of your abdominals, flexes you forward to do a sit-up. That's another mobilizing muscle. So we do work those in Pilates, but we also work your deep stabilizing muscles as well. For example, in your shoulder, the rotator cuff muscles, they're the muscles that stabilize the joint of the shoulder. In your pelvis, we work pelvic floor and transverse abdominal muscles. They actually stabilize your pelvis. So we'll go into that a little bit more in detail as we go, but just so you understand why we're talking about these stabilizing muscles and how that Pilates differs from other exercises. So why is breathing important? Breathing is actually really essential when you're doing your Pilates because firstly, it helps you focus. So on the particular movement we might be doing, it might actually help you get into that movement. For example, in a sit-up, as you flex your body forward, you're going to naturally be compressing the lungs, so you'll naturally want to exhale as you move your body. Another reason is to prevent fatigue. So the more we breathe, the more oxygen we'll be getting through the body. So that will in turn help us have more energy. The other reason is to prevent injury. So most of us can sometimes breathe short, sharp breaths and not actually work the right muscles when we're breathing. And then of course to keep you relaxed. So if we're breathing short, sharp breaths, we're not actually relaxing the body. If we take deep breaths into the body, we will actually keep the body more relaxed. So I want you to try something. Just come off your seat or off your pillow for a moment, lie down on the floor and just get comfortable so that your one hand is on your chest and one hand is on your belly. And in this position, just relax and notice, where does your breath go mostly? Is it in the chest as you inhale, or is it in the tummy? So think about, is your chest rising more, or is your belly rising more when you inhale? So just notice that. You might be more in the belly, you might be more in the chest, or equal. So once you've figured that out for yourself, carefully come on up. And the reason we want to breathe into the lower part of the body is so that we're not using the accessory muscles, we call them. So the muscles in the neck and shoulders. So if we're doing short, sharp breaths, we're actually lifting the neck and shoulders more, and we're not staying relaxed in that area, obviously, and we're not able to take very deep, long breaths. We're not able to get as much oxygen into the body. Whereas if you were breathing more into the belly, that's great, because the breath is coming deeper into the body. Obviously the breath's going into your lungs, but your breath is also distributed throughout your body. So in Pilates, unlike yoga, we're going to focus on breathing into the side of the ribs. If you've ever done yoga before, you'll know that they direct the breath more into the belly. They let the belly rise and fall. So because in Pilates we want to keep slight engagement of the abdominals, we're going to focus more on breathing into the side of the ribs. So if you just place your hands onto the side of the rib cage and think about your ribs as an accordion. So as you breathe in, your ribs expand out wide, and then as you breathe out, your ribs close again. I don't want you to just think about ribs expanding to the sides. I also want you to think of them opening back. So for the moment, we're going to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Like you're breathing out, blowing out a candle through pursed lips. As you inhale, expand your ribs, and as you exhale, close the ribs. So if you don't get a lot of movement through the ribs, just take a side stretch. Just lift your arm and stretch all the little muscles in between the ribs, your intercostal muscles, and just stretch them out. You'll find this might help a little. You can do this a few times. Breathe in, exhale, stretch. So the more stretch you get down here, the more movement you'll be able to get there as well. Come back up and just try that again. Inhaling, exhaling. Hopefully that's helped you get a little bit more movement. So the reason we're breathing out through pursed lips is to help us activate our abdominal muscles. So during Pilates, we want to make sure that we are keeping our abdominals slightly connected. So if you just place your fingertips on your hip bones, press your fingertips into your lower tummy, and just notice as you breathe in, expand your ribs. When you breathe out, notice if your lower tummy tightens underneath your fingers. Hopefully it does. Breathe in again. Breathe out. Good. And if you didn't feel it then, don't worry. We have other ways to get you to feel that connection. So a little bit about the muscles in your abdominal area that help you breathe. So as I mentioned before, the six-pack sits down the front, which we all know about, okay? And your obliques sit down the sides of your waist. They twist you from side to side. The rectus abdominal muscle flexes you forward. And then deeper layers of abdominal muscles sit underneath those muscles, which is your transverse abdominal muscle. It's like a corset, wraps around and attaches into your back. And that muscle is the muscle that will actually flatten your stomach. So just imagine a corset tightening, and that's that muscle connecting. The other muscle is your pelvic floor. So it sits underneath, well, a group of muscles like a sling. So just imagine a little bowl or a sling underneath, in between your pubic bone and your tailbone, all underneath here. So the pelvic floor helps support and hold in the organs from underneath. So when we breathe, it's a combination of all these muscles and also your diaphragm. Your diaphragm sits just under your ribs, and that's like a big kind of mushroom looking muscle. So as you inhale, that presses down to allow the lungs to expand, and then as you exhale, that muscle will lift again. In turn, the pelvic floor will rise and fall. So we talk about the pelvic floor and your transverse abdominal muscle a lot in Pilates. Less about pelvic floor nowadays than we used to. Pelvic floor, for you to understand, is when we engage it, is the muscle that stops you going to the toilet. So think about going to the toilet, number one, and you have to stop going to the toilet. And as you do that, you're actually squeezing up the muscles. So try it now at home. So think, go to the toilet, number one, and you've got to stop halfway through, and you're gently lifting those muscles. For men, the cue is a little bit different. That may not work for you. Think about walking into cold water. I've heard that one works, and you get that lifting feeling, or lifting the crown jewels. So think about those muscle connections, and now do that at home completely 100%. So squeeze right up. And you may notice that you kind of tense the shoulders a little bit. Now relax. Now I want you to just squeeze about halfway, about 50%, and release. Now even less, about 20%, And that's what we want for our Pilates. So sometimes you'll hear about Kegels exercises. Some doctors prescribe those, especially if women have had children, and they will ask you to do a squeeze up of 100%. So in your Pilates, we don't want the 100%, we want about 20%, if we want the connection at all. In a healthy body, that connection should naturally happen. If you're weaker down in the pelvic floor, or if you've had a back injury, you may not connect that area very well. So we may need to engage it. So just be aware of knowing about your pelvic floor, and also your pelvic floor will work with your transverse abdominal muscle. So one last little check here, or test. Bring your fingers onto your front hip bones and slide them into your lower tummy again. So I want you now, as you exhale, to engage your pelvic floor muscles and notice how your lower tummy will firm. And now release. So as you exhale, gently connect your pelvic floor and notice your lower tummy will firm, hopefully, and then release. So if your pelvic floor and your transverse abdominal muscle are working well together, they should both activate together, okay? And most of us do. If you weren't finding that, please let me know and we can go into that in more detail. So when we're doing our Pilates, what we'll mostly talk about is the transverse abdominal muscle. Another way to find that connection, if you didn't already then, just by breathing and connecting, is on your hands and knees. So just come to the floor and have your hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips, and find your neutral position in your back. So not tucking, not arching, a natural little curve in your spine. And then from here, let your belly fall, and then just gently draw up your lower tummy. So now we have gravity helping us. Let your belly fall as you inhale, and then gently as you exhale, draw up. So I want you to think about letting the tummy go without arching your back. And as you exhale, draw the lower tummy up without rounding your back. One more time, inhale, and exhale, it's gently pulling the lower tummy in. Try not to think about drawing your belly button to your spine, it's just the lower abs. And hopefully that one will work for you. That's a great exercise in itself if you do want to practice connecting. There's one more little cue I'm going to give you, actually. That's a great one if you haven't found it with either of those. So imagine you've got drawstring pants around your waist and they tie up at the back, at the lower part of your back. The sacrum is the triangle section at the base of your spine here before your vertebrae start. So that's where the tie up is. So what I want you to think about is you have to stand up with those baggy pants on and you don't want them to fall down. So you've got to draw the strings together at the back to tighten them. So hopefully what you're feeling here now is a firming of the lower tummy. And what's going on here is your little back muscles, your stabilizing back muscles, your multifidus, are actually engaging and working through to the front part of the transverse abdominal muscle. So that is all connected. So you may find one of those cues I've given you today works best for you, or analogies. Choose what works best. Some may be better than others at certain parts of your practice. And if you can, practice if at home, breathing and engaging the abdominals on the exhale. So practice it. Inhaling, exhaling, finding your abdominals. That can be pelvic floor if you know you need to work your pelvic floor, and that can be just lower tummy if you know you need to work your lower tummy. Then once you get good at the connecting as you exhale, releasing as you inhale, I want you to connect the whole time. So hold the connection and keep breathing. That's your next level. So you can do this either sitting at the lights when you're driving, you can do this at home on the couch, anywhere. No one needs to know you're doing it, but just start to practice that. And then we'll be bringing this breathing and abdominal engagement into all of your exercises in the next videos. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you again soon on the mat. Thank you.